Reports are in now that China will be opening Avengers Endgame on April 24th. That means that its box office will be counted for the worldwide opening numbers, which means that Avengers Endgame is guaranteed to smash the record for the largest worldwide opening ever. It doesn't matter what happens with its marketing, it doesn't matter if some of the people in the film say some weird and crazy stuff that would normally tank a film. This is guaranteed to break the worldwide opening record. If we take a look at the inflation-adjusted worldwide opening records, we can see that the biggest film ever was just from last year, the Infinity War. So Avengers Infinity War has the record, $640 million. Why am I sure that that'll be absolutely smashed? Well, because the $640 million, the biggest opening ever, didn't include about $191 million from China's opening weekend, and didn't include a few $1,000,000 more from other countries, and in total it's around about $209 million that weren't actually included in that total. The reason that $209 million from some countries' opening weekends weren't included is because they opened after the US opening date. And so what basically happens with the opening weekends, which is why they're a bit of a scam really, but it's still good to break records and talk about numbers, but how the worldwide opening weekends work are that all of the money a film has earned up until midnight on Sunday, America time, or US North America time, is the actual amount of money. And so right here, for example, China will be opening up before Sunday, where the film actually opens in North America, which means all of the money China earns to that date is counted. Now, it's also, again, a little bit of a scam, because China will be opening 2 days before the film actually opens in North America, which means it's not China's opening weekend that'll get counted. There'll be an additional 2 days. And most of the countries around the world, the same thing happens. You'll get countries opening films on the Monday or the Tuesday or the Wednesday, and then they open in America on the Wednesday. And because America is basically behind every other country in the world, the way that the clock system works, it gives everywhere an extra 2 to 3 to 4 days of box office proceeds before it's actually Sunday night their time. So, well, Sunday night America time for them, which may be Mondays. So, again, depending on where films open and what time they open at, that can lead to what your actual opening weekend is, not so much how strong as a film. Now, don't get me wrong, this film's going to be massive and it'll open to a lot of money, but even if it only gets the same amount of money in the North American market as Infinity War did, and even if all of the overseas markets only get the same amount of money which they got over there, it'll smash the record, because there's probably another $200 million will be added on. So if everything stays the same, you've got, well, $210 million extra going on. That's about $850 million opening weekend. And so without any new hype, any new reason for people to watch the film, you're going to get $850 million. Now, perhaps there's some people that saw Infinity War and didn't like it. There's going to be some percentage of people, maybe let's say 10% of people saw Infinity War and said, no, I'm not interested in the sequel, and 90% said, yes, we are going to go see. So even if there's an opening weekend drop-off of 10%, which I don't know anywhere saying it'll drop off, you're still going to get more than $640 million. So the $640 million, biggest ever, absolutely guaranteed to fall. And not fall by $1 million or $10 million or whatever. It's going to go down by at least $150 million. $800 million is probably a realistic target if things go bad. So if it gets less than $800 million on the opening weekend, as ridiculously high as that amount is, and it is, again, will smash the record, that's basically a failure and a bad indication of where the film's going to go. So if it only gets $800 million, there's some questions as to what the actual support of the film really is. Is it overhyped? Are people done with it? But we'll see what happens. I had another video made a few days ago about how it could make $1 billion on the opening weekend. I'll have a link to that at the end of this one, I'm sure. But whether or not it makes $1 billion, it's a nice round figure to have a look at. The main thing to see if it's going to perform very well or not, or if it has the opportunity to perform very well or not, is to look at how many theatres that they're actually planning on opening the film to, compared to how many theatres were opened up for the Infinity War. 4,474 are the number of theatres that officially had Infinity War in it, so we really want to see that number go up. But again, that number itself doesn't mean that much. It's what we really need to know is how many sessions are available. Now, that number I don't think is available to ever see, unfortunately. I'd love it if someone knows a site that shows how many sessions worldwide or just in North America a film is on. But what we can see is how many theaters have it available. Now, if we look at the international page on thenumbers.com for Infinity War, what we get, unfortunately, are a whole pile of theatre numbers, but one country, it's unfortunate it's only one, but one country actually shows the number of screens. And so if you look at Australia, see a little asterisk there next to Australia down the bottom, it explains that in the theatres column, that's not theatres, that's how many screens it's on. We can actually see how many screens were dedicated to it. That is a far better figure to use than theatres. Unfortunately, we just don't have that number for the important North American market, and we don't really have the number for anything else. Now, it doesn't say that that's what China does, but what China has listed there, the 205,100, that's more than the number of theatres in China. So I'm assuming that's also the number of screens that China uses, but I actually have no idea what that figure is for China. It's a massive number there, but it is more screens, at least according to the Motion Picture Association of America. China doesn't have that many theatres in the whole country, so I don't even know what that number is, but it's a good chance that could also be the number of screens, but I'm not sure. But if you just look at the Australian number, it says that Infinity War was on 940 screens. Now, Australia, not a very large market compared to the North American market. It opened to $16 million, so far less than what it opened. I think it was about 250 million, 257 million, I think, is what Infinity War actually opened to. So far under that, but it gives us just a good indication. If Australia's able to turn on more screens than 940, what kind of percent it is, then perhaps America's able to do something similar. Again, it's not fantastic, but it's really the only number available to look at. So if that screen number is increased by 10% or 20%, there's a good chance the same thing is happening all over the world. If it opens to more than 20% of the money that Infinity War opened to, it'll get $1 billion. Okay, so 20% is the gap roughly between $850 million and $1 billion. So if there's at least 20% more screens, that gives it the opportunity to perhaps do that. It doesn't mean it'll happen, but it gives it the opportunity to give more people a chance to see the film. Now, the downside of this, if it makes $850 million, which I really think it should do very easily, if it makes $1 billion on the opening weekend, that doesn't really mean anything for its total gross for the entire run of the film. So if the film makes $1 billion, there'll be a lot of hype behind the film, but the film is already hyped 100%. Everybody that's going to see this movie knows about the movie. There's going to be very few people that go, oh, that sounds like an interesting movie to see. Okay, it's already known. It doesn't need to be advertised. The only advertisement it needs is what date you can see the film. That's it. As long as people know when it's out, it's going to get people to see it too. So any additional hype about breaking records and so on, I don't think that's going to get even more people to see the film, as opposed to a lesser known film that does very well. People might go, oh, it's obviously a bit better than I thought, let's see it. Everybody knows this film, so there's really nothing that'll get more people to see the film, I don't think. I think it's overhyped. That maybe sounds negative, but it's hyped as much as a film can be, so everybody's going to see it anyway. All that can happen now are the reviews. Are the reviews for the film going to be good or bad? If the film isn't good, it will make a heap of money. It'll make a massive amount of money. It could still make $2 billion easily if people say this film's bad. And I'm talking about both the critic scores for what you can trust that with and what the audience scores say. So if the audience and the critics on, let's forget Rotten Tomatoes, let's go to, say, Metacritic, if they say the film's bad, the film will probably still make $2 billion. Okay, it may make a bit less, but $2 billion is what it will make if it opens to $1 billion. It's just going to make a ridiculous amount of money. But yeah, opening weekend does not in any way guarantee what will happen. So if it has a massive opening weekend, and it's guaranteed, okay, it's going to break records, it'll have the biggest opening weekend ever. Will it be the biggest film ever? No. I think definitely won't. It will not be the biggest film ever. I'd like to see it become the biggest film ever. That'd be good to break that record, but I don't think it will. The main target that most places are talking about is saying that it could beat Avatar. It could beat Avatar. I'm not saying it couldn't, but I think that's just a target that's a little bit too high to be realistic no matter what the opening weekend is. So I hope it earns more money than Avatar earned. Here you can see the inflation-adjusted worldwide totals. Avatar is the second biggest film ever, $3.25 billion in 2018 dollar terms. The Big Daddy there at the top is still going with the win, $3.69 billion. I don't know when that came out, 1920 or something like that, 1930. It's been the biggest film ever for a long time. People in North America don't see the films as much as they used to in whenever that film came out. The market just isn't there. Now, having said that, everywhere else around the world has a lot more money than they used to. So all of these films that hold records for how much money they've earned, a very large proportion of that money comes from North America, because that's basically where all the people that had money used to be. Whereas now with the growth of other economies around the world, China actually had nearly the same amount of money in its domestic theatre going last year in 2018 as North America did, in different films. Okay, they see a lot of Chinese made films, but I think the totals off the top of the head are something like $11 billion is what Americans spent on films, and China spent somewhere like $9.5 to $10 billion. So the Chinese market's just as big as the American market now. So if the Chinese get on board a film, that's when it can really break worldwide records, because the amount of money that are going into films in the American market is not what Gone with the Wind got. Okay, Gone with the Wind was just a ridiculous film. And you can see down here on the list the number 3 film, Titanic. Okay, when you inflation adjust Titanic, still an absolute massive amount of money, $2.8 billion. Star Wars, that's the real Star Wars number 1, or Star Wars Episode 4 if you like, The New Hope, $2.7 billion. I'm not seeing any articles about people talking about whether or not it can get more money than Star Wars. I don't think it will, to be honest. I would predict right now that it does not earn more money than Star Wars earned. It will not get $2.8 billion. I hope it does. I've got no particular reason to not want films to beat another film, and having a new film break records I think is interesting, but I don't think it will. I don't think it'll get $2.8 billion. I think Star Wars will have more money earned internationally, globally, with inflation than what the Avengers Endgame can do. Okay, E.T. is there. Okay, that's a big target, $2.3 billion to beat E.T. Sound of Music, I've never seen The Sound of Music, $2.3 billion. And then The Force Awakens, there's a realistic, real target to beat. I think that's very doable. Okay, I'm not guaranteeing it would happen, but $2.17 billion that The Force Awakens earned. It's a fairly recent film. It's the 7th biggest film of all time. I think that's the real target that it should be going for, to become the biggest film in the last, I don't know, when did Avatar come out? 10 years ago, I think. So can this be the biggest film in the last 10 years? Maybe doesn't sound as good as the biggest ever, but that would be what you need to be to beat The Force Awakens. So, and then the list obviously goes down. Number 10 is Infinity War. So that, again, that's the real good target right here. Can it earn more money than Infinity War earned? I think it should. I think right now you would think that it should earn more money than Infinity War earned, but who knows what it'll earn. Again, it depends if the film's good, okay? There's no reason to think the film won't be good, except the film's probably going to have some sort of time travel involved, and that leads to a lot of plot problems. If the film doesn't have anything like that, there's no reason it won't earn way more than $2 billion. But if there are plot issues, time travel isn't great to try to create a film around, and to have things, well, why didn't you go back to this date? Why didn't you go back to that date? Why didn't you do that? There's a lot of questions when time travel is involved, and generally speaking, I would say it's difficult to pull that off. But anyway, that's one reason I think maybe the film won't be considered quote-unquote good by a lot of people, but I hope it is. And again, more than $2 billion is on the cards right now. We'll see what happens. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.